Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome into another game day update. The Grizzlies today will take on a familiar foe, the Brooklyn Nets. Joining me, Adam Armbrecht, and we were talking about it before I pressed record that the Nets, since we saw them last week, have been doing great. The Grizzlies, however, on a 5-game losing streak. It's the 11th and 13th teams in the West going up against each other. And we're going to talk about it because we play tonight at 6:30 p.m. The Nets are coming off 2 big wins versus the Hawks. But before that was a loss to the Magic where they only scored 81 points. And then against the Hawks, it was 124, 114. What was the difference there?
Yeah, the last two games, I mean, one of the differences is playing teams that aren't as good as the better teams in the league. That's something familiar, probably to Grizzlies fans as well. But for the Atlanta games, it really came down to Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges. They're the two players that came in the Kevin Durant trade. They're supposed to be the centerpieces. And for different reasons, Mikal, I think, has played well this year, but has been in a bit of an extended slump leading up to these last couple. Cam Johnson has not been nearly worth the contract that they signed him to this offseason. So Johnson ends up leading that first game against Atlanta with 29 points. He's absolutely electric from beyond the arc. He gets at the basket. Like, it just looks like all these things that you want to say, well, maybe it's because he's been injured and the hamstring, and there's been some little things for him all year long. Maybe he shook those free. So he shows up big in that game, and then it's followed up by Mikal the next one. I mean, this is Mikal, certainly one of your best players. No Cam Thomas still, so he is your best player on the court. He needs to step up in a big moment like this, and Cam Johnson's supposed to be the supporting cast. So the last two games have been that recipe, and there's no real way around it. Without Cam Thomas, especially, they need those two players to be 20, 25 plus point scorers a night if they're gonna have a chance to win games.
Mikal Bridges is obviously, like you said, like the centerpiece to the offense right now. He's averaging 21 and a half points per game. Vince Williams Jr. was on him in the last game that we played against the Brooklyn Nets, where Mikal had just 11 points. And Vince is kind of our dog on defense. He doesn't care about your name. He doesn't care who the superstar is. He's just going to go out and defend. Bridges coming off a 38-point game. What can Vince do to keep him closer to 11 than 38?
Yeah, the interesting thing from that standpoint is game flow and understanding, or Mikal understanding. This extends even to Dennis Schroeder a little bit, what the game is dictating. And I mean, facilitating, looking to others, right? There were blitzing actions that got run at Mikal in that game where it was a surprise for Mikal, a surprise for the Nets coaching staff, maybe, that there were other things that were required of him. From a Memphis standpoint, rinse and repeat. Like, Mikal Bridges is a very good player, but
Mhm.
he's not going to take a guy off the dribble with consistency. He's not going to create elite separation for his own shot. A lot of what happened in Atlanta, which is a great game for him, but it was just they got out early. They had the advantage of getting out in transition, getting the ball into his hands. And frankly, Atlanta didn't do anything to adjust throughout the game. It was, well, it looks like he's going to get his. And on the one hand, you say, yeah, let Mikal beat us with his 30 plus points. But if nobody else contributes, then we probably still have a path to having wins. I think even though the Grizzlies are obviously a team that's struggling right now, they present better defensive matchups for the Brooklyn Nets on the Grizzlies side that I think I wouldn't get too far away from the game script. Stay tight to him, stay in front of him, force him to stay away from the basket. Mikal's not a guy that wants to get downhill a ton at the rim. And from that standpoint, crowd his space, get up on him, force him to try to go into those actions, and then let some of the length you have on the interior. You have bigger guys, even just from a mass standpoint, which the Brooklyn Nets lack. So force him to play with some of those physical games. Atlanta doesn't have any really of those big defensive presence that can be physical against any of the Brooklyn Nets players. Grizzlies have that, and that's the kind of game that can make it certainly more difficult for Mikal.
Yeah, just something to keep in mind, Grizzlies fans, Jaren Jackson Jr., one of those big guys, is day-to-day today. So maybe back, may not be back. He missed the last 2 games. Trey Jemison is in, though, and he's one of those big physical guys as well. Um, you're talking rinse and repeat. That is on the defensive end. The Grizzlies, however, last time only scored 86 points against the Brooklyn Nets. It was 111-86. Jaren, a guy who's day-to-day right now, had 15 points. It was Lamar Stevens who actually led the way with 17 points. What did you see from Brooklyn's defense that game?
I think The Grizzlies afford, and we talked about this last time. You have a lot of guys on 10-day contracts. You have players in and out of the lineup with injuries. The Grizzlies afford the Nets to just play stay at home, consistent defense. Trust your assignments, trust the pass offs. And one of the things that was true then, and is going to be true in this game, the Nets don't have Cam Thomas. Now, offensively, that creates a certain level of concern or issue. But defensively, it makes things a little bit better for them. They've still been playing Dennis Smith Jr. a handful of minutes. He's undersized, yes, but he's a tenacious defender. He's going to stay tight on players. It, if I'm the Grizzlies, I hate to be, reductive about it, but you have to hit more shots. You have to knock down your perimeter looks. You have to be a better shooting team from the field. I think when you see a team like the Grizzlies, and again, I don't mean this, the Nets are a struggling team too overall, but when you see a team like the Grizzlies, and their season-long theme is we don't shoot very well, and we don't do a great job from the outside either. The only way that I would see them having success is get on the interior. Right? There's no Ben Simmons. He hasn't been a physical presence, this season. So it is Nicholas Claxton. It is Day'Ron Sharpe. Try to force the issue and make it that the Nets get some foul trouble on those two players. And now all of a sudden you're into Dorian Finney-Smith playing small ball five. Now you're into Trendon Watford territory if the Nets go that way. So if you can get some fouls early on the interior, then I think you start to shift a little bit of this narrative where the Nets are still going to be dependent on their offense and their shooting, but defensively, you take away some of their anchors, specifically a versatile player like Claxton.
Seems easy. Seems
Yeah,
easy.
just do, yeah.
Talk
Check,
about it
check,
in
check.
theory, seems easy. Let's end with both of us giving one thing. I'll give something for our fans to be excited about. You give me
Yep.
something for Brooklyn fans to be excited about. I'll go first.
Sure.
Tonight's game for the Grizzlies, for head coach Taylor Jenkins, a win would be his 200th win. Something a little extra to play for tonight.
See, that's lovely. What a lovely little sentiment there. If you're the Brooklyn Nets, you mentioned those two Atlanta games being critical. And now this Memphis game, you've already faced them recently. You've had success against them. You get this win, you potentially can pull yourself within a game of that final play in seed. Atlanta's ahead of you. You've won that season series. So with Philadelphia coming up, they're reeling without Joel Embiid, certainly. This is the surge. There's a lot of winnable games coming up, but you can't look past every single one. Get this win, and you remain in that conversation to have some postseason basketball potentially.
That's a big one, and I put you on the spot. Well done, Adam. Thank you for coming on today. I appreciate you.
Anytime.